Good afternoon. Amid a whirlwind of speeches and conferences during the partial government shutdown, Democrat and Republican senators continue negotiations. Senator Harry Reid told reporters they were getting closer to reaching a deal. However, nothing has been finalized yet. With this delay, I mean, you mentioned it. You know, we felt we were about to be propelled into being a lot closer to a deal, and now this screeching halt has come to pass. So what does this change, if anything?
Oh, right now, it's just a little bit too early to tell. But on the plus side, House Speaker John Boehner met with a few of his leaders to construct a deal in the event that these Senate talks between Reid and McConnell end up falling through.
President Obama and his congressional allies have achieved an almost condition-free debt ceiling increase. One America's Washington, D.C. managing editor, David Brody, examines the GOP's perspective.
The president has a lot to be happy about. Quite frankly, he didn't budge, neither did Harry Reid or the Democrats, and ultimately that is why they won this government shutdown / debt ceiling.
With the government reopened and a default averted, life in Washington is slowly returning to normal. However, the deal ending the shutdown is only temporary and the budget remains in question. Linda So has a look at the fallout from Congress's standoff.
Federal employees are back on the job. The D.C. Metro a lot busier and the streets a bit more crowded as Washington reopened for business.
In southern Syria, an activist group says shelling by President Bashar Assad's forces has killed at least 11 people.
People of Iran await the results of UN talks, which could decide the country's future. The talks, to be held in Geneva this week, will focus on Iran's nuclear program.
British scientists say they've found evidence that sarin gas was used in last month's chemical weapons attack in Syria. Britain's Prime Minister David Cameron says experts examined samples of clothing from one of the reported victims and also examined the soil from that area.
Speaking at a news conference in Paris, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry says the video makes it very clear that the attack is not something Americans can ignore. One America's Tara Millsbaugh explains.
U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry reiterates that the United States will not begin a war with Syria, but he wants to hold the Assad regime accountable for the use of chemical weapons on their own people.
As Syria's civil war wages on, the spotlight turns to Russia. United Nations Secretary General Ban Ki-moon is in Russia urging peace talks just as scrutiny intensifies into Moscow's supply of arms to the Syrian government.
I enjoy pop culture. America revolves around pop culture. It is single-handedly the biggest method of influence to both our nation and others around the world. In today's world, pop culture drives the influence of the American people, not politics. Whether it's through film, television, celebrity endorsement, or internet memes, it defines who we are as a society and influences the decisions we make in our daily lives.
Rick Amato brings his knowledge and experience about today's politics 5 days a week, only on One America News.
What are some of the things that our viewers might find intriguing or interesting?
Yesterday, the government came out and said that there were approximately 50 terrorist attacks that have been either averted nationally and internationally.
Join me at this time is nationally syndicated radio talk show host and staunch Tea Party supporter Rusty Humphreys. Where do you think this puts the Republican Party and the Tea Party? I mean, there's two separate questions, but under one big umbrella. Where do you see things?
All right, well, here's first part of the problem, and that is Republicans are really bad at messaging.
Next on the Daily Ledger, a hard look at a very weak economy. Employment is being hammered by Obamacare. And now, student loans are being messed up by your elected officials. Interest rates on student loans are now doubling. Not good news for new college students. Joining me now, MJ Lee, financial services reporter with Politico. MJ, let's start with student loans. The numbers have doubled.
The doubling of the student interest rate is not necessarily because folks in Washington wanted to see that rate double.
The nature of these cards is you could spend it on any one of a variety of products.
And in some states, you have the threshold being raised so high that a family of 4 in a certain state can make $60,000 and still receive food stamps. Or was this just some sort of rogue bunch of IRS agents? I think that's probably a rhetorical question, but go ahead.
Well, the rogue agent theory is basically out the window at this point. We've seen that there was communication coming from Washington, D.C. to the IRS agency in Cincinnati.
Mike Huckabee told us here at One America News Network that he indeed is also thinking of running. Here's some of that exclusive sound.
Hesitancy to say for sure. Does that mean I will? I don't know. Does that mean I won't? I don't know. But am I thinking about it? Am I talking to people about it? Yeah, that'd be fair to say.
Look, most Americans don't care about a bunch of politicians in Washington. Most Americans care about their families, going to work, going to church, raising their kids, having a better future for the next generations. And Obamacare is the biggest job killer.
I think the bigger fundamental issue that confronts the country that we don't seem to be spending nearly enough time on is the erosion of the American dream and the reasons why that's happening. What I mean by the erosion of the American dream is the countless people who now can't find a job, they've been unemployed for more than a year, people that seem trapped in dead-end jobs that don't pay enough money and they're not keeping up with their expenses.
Demonstrations are planned throughout the day across the country.
Texas Governor Rick Perry signs the new abortion bill into law.
A suicide bomber kills more than a dozen people.
As you know, the NSA and government surveillance have been in the crosshairs of the American people.
I think we take dynamite to the IRS, blow it up, and institute a flat tax or a consumption tax.